I was standing in the coffee aisle a few weeks ago, and I noticed something. The same bag I always buy had a new price tag. Not a huge jump, just enough to make me stop and look twice. That's when it hit me. Nobody really talks about this stuff until it's too late. By the time you see it on the news, the price has already gone up, and you're just paying it, like everyone else. So I started paying closer attention. I looked at what's happening with supply chains, weather patterns, and the stuff sitting on my own pantry shelf right now. And what I found kind of surprised me. There are foods sitting in your grocery store today at prices that probably won't last. Some because of weather, some because of global shortages, some because companies are quietly shrinking what's in the package or getting ready to raise prices once nobody's paying attention anymore. Today, I'm walking you through 18 of them. Some are obvious once you hear it. A few genuinely surprised me. Keep an eye out for number 6. When I found out what was happening with that one, I actually went out and bought extra that same day. If you care about stretching your money right now and staying a step ahead instead of finding out the hard way, stick around. And if this is useful, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to keep digging into this stuff every week. Let's get into it. Item number 1. Coffee. Coffee is usually the first thing people notice because most of us drink it every single day. Global coffee prices have been climbing for a while now. Weather problems in the major growing regions, along with rising costs to ship and roast it, have been pushing prices up at the source, long before it ever reaches your shelf. Industry reports have been flagging this for months. Retailers are already adjusting shelf prices in small steps, a little at a time, so it doesn't feel like one big jump. I actually switched to buying whole bean coffee in bulk a few months back, mostly because it was cheaper per ounce. When I checked the price again last month, it had crept up almost every time I looked. My local warehouse store still had a decent price on it, so I bought 2 extra bags just to be safe. If coffee is part of your daily routine, this is a good one to stock now. Buy the bigger bag, keep it sealed, and store it somewhere cool and dark so it stays fresh for months. This isn't about panic buying. It's about not getting caught paying double for your morning cup later. Item number 2. Olive oil. Olive oil has already gone through one rough stretch, and most people don't realize it isn't fully over. Drought conditions in the main olive-growing regions have hit harvests hard in recent years. Even as things recover slowly, pricing tends to lag behind, staying high long after the weather improves. Industry watchers have pointed out that these price increases often stick around because once a company raises the price, it rarely drops all the way back down. I used to buy the big tin without thinking twice about it. Last time I was in the store, I noticed the price per ounce had basically doubled compared to what I remembered from a couple years back. I ended up buying a second bottle just to lock in the lower price while I could still find it. If you use olive oil regularly, buy an extra bottle now rather than waiting. Store it in a cool, dark cabinet away from the stove so it doesn't go rancid before you use it. Small habits like this add up more than people expect. Item number 3. Chocolate and cocoa products. This one has been all over the headlines, but most people still don't realize how deep it goes. Cocoa prices spiked dramatically in recent years due to poor harvests in the main growing regions. That price hasn't fully come back down, and it's been working its way into everything from candy bars to baking chocolate. Reports from food industry analysts have described this as one of the biggest cost pressures manufacturers have dealt with in years, and many are quietly shrinking bar sizes instead of raising the sticker price outright. I noticed this myself with a brand I've bought for years. The price stayed the same, but the bar felt lighter in my hand. I checked the weight printed on the wrapper, and sure enough, it had gone down. If you bake, or you just like having chocolate on hand, buy chocolate chips or baking bars now, while pricing is still relatively stable. They store well in a cool pantry for a long time. This is one of those items where the shrinking package is honestly sneakier than a price hike. Item number 4, canned tuna and seafood. Canned seafood is one of those pantry staples people forget about until they need it. Ocean conditions and fishing quotas have been tightening supply in several regions, and shipping costs for seafood have stayed elevated. That combination tends to push shelf prices up gradually rather than all at once. Seafood industry data has shown steady upward pressure on canned tuna and salmon pricing over the past couple of years, with no clear sign of it easing. I keep a small stock of canned tuna for quick lunches, and when I went to restock recently, the price per can had gone up more than I expected. I ended up buying a case instead of a few cans, just because the per unit price was still better buying in bulk. If you eat canned seafood regularly, stock up when you see a sale, and buy in bulk if your store offers a warehouse size option. It has a long shelf life, so there's no rush to use it. This is an easy one to build a small buffer around without much effort. Item number 5. Peanut butter. Peanut butter feels like one of those foods that should always be cheap. That's starting to change. Peanut crop yields have been inconsistent due to weather swings in major growing states, and processing costs have gone up alongside everything else. That combination has been quietly pushing prices higher over the last year. Consumer complaint boards and price tracking sites have both noted the same pattern: smaller jars for the same price, or the same jar costing more than it did last year. I buy peanut butter every couple of weeks for my kids' lunches, so I actually track this one pretty closely. The price has gone up 3 separate times in the last year that I can remember, each time in a small, easy-to-miss increment. Buy the larger jar when you see it on sale, and store it in a cool pantry. It keeps for a long time unopened, so there's no downside to grabbing extra. This is a small item, but it adds up fast if you're feeding a family. Item number 6. Eggs. All right, here's the one I told you about. Eggs have already been through wild price swings over the past couple of years, mostly driven by outbreaks affecting egg-laying flocks. Every time there's a new outbreak, prices spike hard and fast, sometimes within just a few weeks. Agricultural reports have repeatedly flagged this as an ongoing risk, not a one-time event. The supply chain for eggs is more fragile than most people realize, because it only takes one regional outbreak to tighten the entire national supply. I actually spoke with someone who works at a local farm supply store about this, and they told me they've seen this pattern repeat almost every year now. Prices calm down for a while, then spike again out of nowhere. When I heard that, I started keeping a dozen extra in the fridge at all times, just as a buffer. Eggs don't store well long-term unless you freeze them, but you can crack them into a container and freeze them for months. If you bake often, or go through eggs quickly, this is worth doing before the next spike hits. This is exactly the kind of thing that catches people off guard, because it happens fast, and then it's already too late to plan around it. Item number 7. Rice is a staple in a lot of households, and it's easy to assume the price never really moves. That's not quite true anymore. Global rice supply has been affected by export restrictions from some of the largest producing countries in recent years, along with weather disruptions during key growing seasons. That combination has pushed international prices up, and it eventually filters down to your local shelf. Trade reports have noted that rice pricing tends to react slowly, but once it moves, it tends to stay elevated for a long stretch. I switched to buying the large bag a while back to save money, and when I went to restock, the price per pound had gone up more than I expected. I bought 2 bags instead of 1, mostly because rice stores almost indefinitely if you keep it sealed and dry. If rice is a staple in your kitchen, buy in bulk and store it in an airtight container. It's one of the easiest things to stock up on without worrying about spoilage. This is a low-effort item to get ahead of, and it can genuinely save you money over the course of a year. Item number 8. Frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables don't get enough credit, and most people don't realize their pricing is shifting too. Rising costs for processing, packaging, and cold storage have been pushing up the price of frozen produce, even when the fresh version at the farm level hasn't changed much. It's the middle steps that are getting more expensive. Food industry data has shown that frozen food prices have climbed steadily, partly because energy costs for refrigeration and freezing have gone up across the board. I used to buy fresh vegetables almost exclusively, but I started leaning more on frozen bags because they last longer and waste less. Even so, I noticed the bags I buy regularly have gotten a little smaller, while the price stayed about the same. Stock your freezer with a variety of frozen vegetables when they go on sale. They hold their nutrients well, and buying in bulk during a sale locks in a better price for months. This is one of those items where a little bit of freezer space goes a long way. Item number 9. Butter and dairy. Staples butter tends to fly under the radar, but it's been quietly climbing for a while now. Dairy production costs, including feed prices and energy for processing plants, have been rising steadily. Butter in particular reacts fast to these shifts because it takes a large amount of milk to produce a relatively small amount of butter. Agricultural pricing reports have shown butter as one of the more volatile dairy products over the past year, with noticeable swings from month to month. I noticed this firsthand around the holidays last year, when I went to buy extra for baking and the price had jumped noticeably compared to a few months earlier. I ended up buying extra and freezing it, since butter freezes really well without losing quality. If you bake, or just go through butter regularly, buy a few extra blocks when the price dips and store them in the freezer. It'll keep for months without any real change in quality. This is a simple way to protect yourself from those seasonal spikes. Item number 10. Orange juice and citrus products. Orange juice has quietly become one of the more expensive things in the beverage aisle, and most people haven't caught up to why. Citrus groves in major producing regions have been dealing with disease and weather damage for years now, shrinking the overall harvest. Less fruit means less juice, and that scarcity shows up directly in pricing. Agricultural analysts have described the citrus supply situation as one of the more serious long-term issues in the produce world, without an easy short-term fix. I used to buy orange juice without thinking about the price at all. Last time I checked, it had gone up enough that I actually paused and compared it to a juice blend instead. That's when I realized how much it had crept up over the last year or two. If your family drinks a lot of orange juice, consider buying the concentrate version, which tends to be more shelf-stable and cost-effective and freezes well for later use. This is one where the shift has already happened quietly, and it's likely to continue. Item number 11. Ground beef. Beef prices have been a talking point for a while, but ground beef specifically deserves its own mention. Cattle herd sizes have been shrinking in recent years due to drought conditions affecting grazing land and feed costs. Smaller herds mean less beef entering the market, and that pressure shows up clearly at the meat counter. Industry data has pointed to tightening beef supply as a multi-year trend, not something that's expected to reverse quickly. I buy ground beef pretty regularly for weeknight dinners, and I've noticed the price per pound creeping up steadily over the last year. When I found a sale recently, I bought extra and portioned it into freezer bags right away. Buy ground beef in bulk when it's on sale and freeze it in meal-sized portions. It holds up well in the freezer for months without losing quality. This is one of those items where a little freezer planning saves real money over time. Item number 12. Pasta and wheat products. Pasta feels like it should always be one of the cheapest things in the store, but wheat pricing has been shifting in ways most people haven't noticed. Global wheat supply has been affected by weather disruptions and export limitations from some major producing regions. That pressure moves through the entire chain, from flour to bread to pasta. Commodity market reports have tracked wheat pricing as more volatile than usual over the past couple of years, with prices reacting quickly to any new disruption. I stock up on pasta a few times a year because it's easy to store, and I noticed the store brand I usually buy had quietly gone up in price without much fanfare. Since it barely expires if stored properly, I bought a larger amount than usual. Buy pasta and other wheat-based staples in bulk when you see a good price, and store them in a cool, dry place. It has an incredibly long shelf life, so there's really no downside to stocking up. This is one of the easiest items on this list to prepare for. Item number 13. Vanilla and black pepper spices don't usually make these lists, but a couple of them deserve a mention here. Vanilla and black pepper are both heavily dependent on specific growing regions, which makes them especially vulnerable to weather events and crop disease. When one bad season hits, prices can spike dramatically because there isn't much of a backup supply. Spice trade reports have flagged both of these as historically some of the most volatile commodities in the entire food industry, with prices that can swing several times over in a short period. I buy real vanilla extract instead of imitation, and I remember being genuinely shocked at the price the last time I restocked. I ended up buying a slightly larger bottle than I needed, just because I didn't want to pay even more the next time around. If you use real vanilla or whole black peppercorns regularly, buy a bit extra when you find a reasonable price. Both store for a very long time in a sealed container. These are small purchases, but they're a good example of how unpredictable pricing can get in this category. Item number 14. Canned beans and legumes. Canned beans are one of the most underrated pantry staples out there, and they're worth paying attention to. Rising costs for canning materials, transportation, and processing have been pushing up prices across the canned goods aisle, beans included. It's less about the beans themselves and more about everything involved in getting them into that can. Retail pricing data has shown steady increases across canned goods broadly over the past couple of years, driven largely by packaging and shipping costs. I started buying canned beans in bulk a while back because they're such an easy, cheap source of protein. When I compared prices recently, the cost per can had gone up more than I expected, especially for the brands I normally buy. Stock up on canned beans when you see a sale, and rotate through your stock so nothing sits too long. They have a long shelf life, so building a small stockpile makes sense. This is a simple, low-cost way to protect your grocery budget over time. Item number 15. Breakfast cereal. Cereal has quietly become one of the more noticeably pricier items in the store, and most people just shrug it off. Rising costs for grain, packaging, and marketing have all been factored into cereal pricing, and boxes have been getting both more expensive and smaller at the same time. Consumer advocacy groups have specifically called out cereal as one of the clearest examples of shrinking package sizes paired with rising prices over the past few years. I used to buy the same cereal every week for my kids without really looking at the price. When I finally compared it to what I remembered paying a couple years ago, the difference was bigger than I expected, and the box felt noticeably lighter too. If cereal is a regular purchase in your house, buy it when it's on sale and consider store brand alternatives, which tend to lag behind in price increases compared to name brands. This is one of those everyday items where paying attention actually makes a real difference. Item number 16. Bread and bakery. Staples bread is one of those things people buy on autopilot, which makes it easy to miss how much pricing has shifted. Wheat costs, along with rising costs for yeast, packaging, and transportation, have all pushed bakery pricing upward. Bread in particular is sensitive to these shifts because it's produced and shipped so frequently. Retail bakery data has shown consistent price increases across most bread categories over the past couple of years, with no clear sign of leveling off. I buy bread every week, so this is one I track almost without trying. The loaf I usually grab has gone up in price a few times over the last year, in small increments that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Bread freezes well, so buying an extra loaf or two when you see a good price and freezing it is a simple way to stay ahead. Just make sure to seal it tightly to avoid freezer burn. This is one of those quiet, everyday costs that adds up more than people realize. Item number 17. Honey. Honey is one of those items that feels expensive already, and it's still climbing. Bee colony health issues, combined with weather disruptions affecting flowering seasons, have been putting pressure on honey production for years. Fewer healthy colonies means less honey, and that scarcity shows up directly in pricing. Agricultural reports have described declining bee populations as an ongoing, long-term concern for honey supply, not a temporary blip. I use honey regularly in my coffee and in baking, and I remember being surprised at how much the price had gone up the last time I bought a jar. I ended up buying the larger size instead, since the price per ounce was noticeably better. Buy honey in bulk when you find a reasonable price and store it in a cool, dry place. It doesn't spoil, so there's no rush to use it, and buying ahead genuinely pays off here. This is one of the more overlooked items on this list, but it's a real one to watch. Item number 18, cooking oils. Cooking oil rounds this list out, and it's one of the most quietly impactful items on the whole list. Vegetable, sunflower, and canola oil pricing has all been affected by global supply disruptions and rising demand for these crops in other industries, including fuel production. That competition for supply pushes food-grade pricing up right alongside it. Commodity trade data has shown cooking oil pricing as one of the more volatile categories over the past couple of years, with noticeable swings tied to global events well outside the average shopper's control. I go through cooking oil fast because I cook almost every night, and I noticed the bottle I usually buy had gone up more than I expected the last time I restocked. I bought the larger jug instead, mostly because it worked out cheaper per ounce, and I knew I'd use it eventually anyway. Buy cooking oil in bulk when you see a good price and store it in a cool, dark place away from the stove. It keeps for a long time if stored properly, so there's no downside to stocking up early. This is one of those items that touches almost everything you cook, which makes it worth getting ahead of. Closing thoughts. So if you look at everything on this list, a pattern starts to show up pretty clearly. It's never one big dramatic price jump that gets you. It's small increases, shrinking packages, and quiet supply chain shifts that add up over months, sometimes years, until one day you look at your grocery total and wonder what happened. The good news is, once you notice the pattern, you can actually plan around it. Buying a little extra of the right items, storing them properly, and paying attention to what's happening behind the scenes puts you ahead of most people, who will only notice once the price is already gone up for good. This isn't about panic buying, and it's not about hoarding. It's about being smart with the money you already have, and not getting caught off guard the way most people will. You noticed this before most people did. That's worth something. If this was helpful, go ahead and subscribe, because I'm going to keep tracking things like this every week before everyone else catches on. Drop a comment and let me know which item on this list surprised you the most. And if you want to stay ahead of the next wave of price changes before they hit your local store, stick around, because there's more coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.